As I cross over US Highway 2's Kennedy Bridge into the city of East Grand Forks, I'm finally back in my own home state of Minnesota. It's been 3 weeks and 75 episodes since I left the state back in episode 2. Minnesota will always be home to me no matter where I end up. It's where I've grown up, and it has a lot to do with my personality, my ability to handle extreme seasonal weather, my accent, and my self-depreciating sense of humor. Minnesota was founded by immigrants of Swedish and Norwegian origin. The harsh winters of the state were akin to those of Scandinavia, but the soil was much more agreeable to farming. As we discussed in episode 68, there were even companies working to populate regions such as these. A plurality of Minnesotans are Lutheran, a throwback to the Northern European Protestant Reformation. As I discussed back in an episode on my flag-raising project in the town called Vasa, King Gustav Vasa gave the Catholic Church the finger and turned the Kingdom of Sweden Lutheran, impacting the denomination of Minnesota's first settlers hundreds of years later. Minnesota's geography is also diverse. We have the Great Plains Prairie region, a thin strip of deciduous forest that you'll find throughout the Twin Cities that looks great in the fall, and the Canadian Shield, a pine tree empire stretching as far north as you can go before there's too little sun for trees to grow. The coniferous forests of the north is where I'm headed. I'm going to head straight into the economic region known as the Iron Range before I head south to my final destination before heading home, Danbury, Wisconsin. There are many nicknames for Minnesota. It's named the Gopher State for our college athletics at the University of Minnesota. It's called the North Star State as a translation from our extremely boring and outdated flag, which has the French motto, L'Étoile du Nord. We're the only state to have our motto in French. Our state is also the furthest north of the continental 48. I traveled to the tippy top of our state by way of Canada in an episode on the Northwest Angle, a practical exclave that is still a part of Minnesota and the US. In that episode, I passed through the city of Warroad, a town famous for producing world-renowned hockey players. For this reason, and the fact we send so many college hockey athletes to the NHL, Minnesota is also known as the state of hockey. My favorite moniker of Minnesota is the land of 10,000 lakes. In reality, we have over 11,842 lakes that are over 10 acres in size. Because of this, Minnesota boasts more shoreline than California and Florida combined. There is also the legend of Paul Bunyan, a major figure in Minnesotan folklore. Paul Bunyan is a lumberjack giant who would travel around the North Woods with his companion, Babe the Big Blue Ox, and log the wilderness. It's said that together they'd created Minnesota's 10,000 lakes with their footprints. He's also known for logging North Dakota, the reason there are no trees there, turning the region into farmland. He drove the whales out of the Great Lakes by trying to harness them to haul his lumber. It's mentioned that it was so cold one year, it was called the Year of the Blue Snow, and Bunyan had found an ox in the snow that was so cold it turned blue, and after nursing him back to health, they became companions. There must be hundreds of statues across the North Woods. Statues dot the landscape all along the entirety of the northern U.S. frontier, from Maine in the east to Washington State in the west. Across the border, he's also a popular figure in Canadian folklore as well. In reality, we don't know the origin of Paul Bunyan. The genesis of all of Paul's tall tales lie in oral tradition of the North American 19th century logging industry. There have been countless books, songs, poems, children's cartoons, and more depicting Paul Bunyan. Anthropologists have tried to dig into the origins of Paul Bunyan, and all early printed sources, going back to the early 1900s, have overlapping themes, meaning that the oral traditions were certainly intertwined. The city I'm coming up to, Bemidji, stakes claim to the birthplace of Paul Bunyan. It's said that one of the jobs that Babe had was to haul the camp tank wagon to pave winter logging roads with ice. It's said that the wagon sprung a leak, and from that leak, Lake Itasca was formed and overflowed, creating a new river. This river flowed all the way down south to New Orleans. You may know it as the Mississippi River. The headwaters of the Mississippi River is here in Minnesota, near Bemidji. Minnesota actually has 2 international ports. One is in the Twin Cities, where barges have been traveling up and down the Mississippi for hundreds of years, and the other is Duluth, a major shipping port for the Iron Range. In 1959, the U.S. locks opened on the St. Lawrence, opening up the Great Lakes to ocean-going vessels for the first time. This, unfortunately, brought its own ecological problems, which we'll dive into in Season 4 as I go around the Great Lakes. There's a little overlap in the next 2 seasons, since I'll be traveling through the North Woods for the end of this season and the beginning of the next. I'm passing through Bemidji, which acts as a kind of gateway on Highway 2 into Minnesota's North Woods. I'm now taking Season 3 into the beginning of its end.